no veas, a Sevilla. Y al último que cuando ya salió la bien de regla.
It is Friday on Raid Shadow Legends, but you knew that. And in many parts of the world, it is Valentine's Day. So if you have a special someone to spend the day with, and... Wait. You do. Right? You don't? Oh, same. And it's not because you play Raid Shadow Legends, really. I know many people who are married with children who play this game. If she likes you, you could be playing one of those weird hentai gachas for 12 hours a day, and she wouldn't think any less of you. That's just how attraction works, so really, I wouldn't worry about it too much. So yeah, if you are one of those who are married with children or are considering it, then great. If not, then, well, make sure to let your AI girlfriend know that you love her, okay? Hey, if you're into that sort of thing, I don't judge. I mean, it's 2025. I know many who have to improvise in that regard. So, speaking of that sort of thing, there are over 24 Mythicals in the game right now, and while there are no useless champions in the game, and definitely no useless Mythicals, some are better than others. So today we're going to go over 5 that, on the topic of love, they haven't received much of it. And starting with obvious is going to be the Calamitus. Now, admittedly, he's in a better place than he was before because people are using this skill for Chimera as a debuff dispenser, but that's really as far as his base form's usage goes. For some reason, he doesn't self-buff attack or crit damage, or really ignore any form of damage mitigation at all, and his only form of self-defense is healing himself. Now, alternate form is fine for Hydra, but Hydra. And this skill is fine, this one is fine, etc, etc. He's serviceable there. If you get him, he's better than a rare, but he's not better than the other Mythicals in the game that you could have been getting. So, moving over to Dark Elves and Aphidus for Hivelord. Now, he's been buffed once. They gave his base form a bit of help in terms of the decreased defense or the extra damage amp here. I'm trying to remember what they did. And alternate form, they kind of did, well, not too much, I guess, in terms of Hydra, but there was a bit of role compression aspects to it. But again, a lot of what he does kind of seems a bit legendary, so to speak. He's not really at the kind of the illegal mythical status. Like, you only need to look at like some of the mythicals that actually just do completely illegal stuff in terms of Nace of Shadow Thief and how he ends up with an absurd amount of stats halfway through a fight. Or, I mean, I think you know I'm getting at here. But Aphidus is still someone who is mostly for PvE areas, and in terms of blue champions who hit PvE stuff really hard, people prefer Ninja or Toshiro. Now, speaking of Toshiro, we're going to go into him next, and not for the reason that you'd think. First off, Toshiro, base form, 0 complaints whatsoever. This is really, really strong character in this form. However, this form. Because we go over to Toshiro Bloody's alternate form, and you'd think, okay, debuffs, extra turn, everything he does is AoE, this should be fine, right? One problem. We got to base form. Normally, A2 Sanguine Dot will increase his HP attack all the way up to an extra 100%. And what happens if he alt forms? Well, he loses those stat bonuses. In fact, they're gone entirely. So, you use for A2 here, then switch forms. You have actively made the champion worse. And it doesn't help that he doesn't hit very hard in the first place in the alt form. It's kind of like healer support. So both forms end up being at odds with the other, and almost everyone just uses him for base form. So he's a fantastic legendary, but as a mythical in terms of 2 forms, no. Okay, so moving over to Skinwalkers and Gallius Bloodcrest. Now, he's a great big chicken. I mean, that's cool enough, right? And then Hydropocalypse came along, and this form just stopped looking so interesting after all. The first issue is that unless you have a whole ton of resistance on him, they counterattack, Mischief steals it, spreads it around. Oh no! Everything else counterattack. How could this have happened? You'd think otherwise you could use it for this, and nah, it just doesn't happen at all. It also doesn't help that this is not that useful, and this ends up just being increased defense, and that's all this does on a 3-turn cooldown. We go to Alt Form, and Alt Form has 2 issues. Damage is not one of them. If this thing lands, it will kill everything it hits. Actually, that's not entirely true, because one of the weaknesses here is, in Alt Form, Gallius has no way to place increased defense in itself. In fact, he doesn't self-buff at all. And also, this is a pretty good offensive passive, but in terms of avoiding ways to get one-shot by, like George just going hoo with the A3, then yeah, he can't stop that. In fact, he can't really stop anything unless they're already under decreased defense, and chances are, if you've hit them first in the current speed meta, then you probably win, but so yeah, it's just not that useful in that regard. Next, we are going over to Gharol Bloodmaul, who... Gharol is a victim of circumstance, I say. It doesn't help that base form is very legendary in some regard. You have this provoke on a 4-turn cooldown, which is only a single turn. Unkillable is fine. Then we just have ally protection and shield. That's all it does, really. There's epics who do very similar, and passive is fine, but it's kind of like Vogoth. And then Alt Form. Now, Alt Form is actually a very dishonest champion, I would say, because this is RNG, this is RNG, so a support will plink your team once, and then Gharol comes along and goes and kills everything. But a couple issues of that. First off, Gharol has no self-defense whatsoever. If someone hits her, she probably dies, or gets CC'd, or gets CC'd then dies. And the other one is, she is green. And right now, we have a lot of blue mythicals who are all very, very relevant. There is Siegfried, there is Gizmak, there is Calamitus, and there is Nace. And all of these Gharol has no way to deal with whatsoever. So that ends up being how she struggles in any PvE area. So instead, you are probably using her for Hydra and going... and then realizing that you can't even do that too much because, Hydropocalypse and heads get actually killed and come back in like 2 hits. So, yeah. And then the last one that I'm going to go for is going to be... actually the new guy. I have not seen anything positive about him. First off, we already have a spirit dwarf who does this. It's called Newt. Most people have him. And this is just a less reliable version of this, apart from needing the 4th hit to break Fire Knight Shield. But other than that, the actual freeze is less reliable. This is fine. No real complaints here. It's a bit legendary, but sure. And then we have this matchup fish freeze that you think it kind of work in PvP, but then I don't know. It just kind of... we have much better options in the game, and extra chance of freeze, which works on Galeon Pact, but in terms of these, it's 4 out of 15 factions, and the rest it is nowhere near as reliable. And then we go to alternate form, and his A1 is just attacks one enemy. By itself, that's all it does. A2 is conditional, extra hits based off if they are CC'd, so he can't do this himself unless you base form for this, then alt to here and use things from there. Or you could use this, which will permadeath someone. But if you are rushing people down, then they usually have some form of way to stop themselves being frozen. Especially nowadays when there's so many champions who are in 4-piece stone skin, 4-piece immunity with lightning cage. It's pretty hard for a lot to deal with that. And he can't place freeze himself in this form, so he's either having to do it himself in his alt form, in his base form even, or, yeah. And his damage multipliers are not the most exciting in the world. Compare it to Nace, who has a 0.47x on the A3, which also has unconditional permadeath, and yeah. And also, the other thing is, unlike Nace, Fjorad can't actually defend himself past, if they try to lock him out, he hits him with this, so yeah. Will they get around to buffing them? It might take some time. It might take a long, long time. But, yeah. So, yeah, I can't think of anything else to say. So, we're going to call it there. I know there's a couple of us who need a bit of help in one form or another. Like how Alaz's alt form is a bit underwhelming as well. But it's not quite as weird as the rest of them. So, yeah. I will leave you to it. If you're going to spend the rest of your day having a romantic dinner with a missus, then I hope you enjoy it. You're probably perfect for each other. Otherwise, tell Hatsune Miku or Tifa Lockhart or Yemiko that you love her, and her predictive text algorithm will say that she loves you back. So, yeah, we're done, and see ya.